To the public, Rob Reiner and Michele Singer's 36-year marriage looked perfect. The kind of forever love you see in old movies. Every photo and red carpet moment showed them as super strong, a couple that nothing could break. People thought their love could survive anything. But behind that perfect picture, something really heavy was going on. Because sometimes being quiet doesn't mean everything is okay. It hides years of hurt that no one talks about. In Rob Reiner's last CBS interview, right before they sadly left, the truth finally came out. Behind closed doors, there were lots of fights, sleepless nights worrying about their son Nick's addiction, and times when their marriage almost ended. The fake calm broke, showing the real feelings they had hidden for years. They didn't stay together because it was easy. They stayed because of their kids. Walking away would break the only family they had left. That love kept them going, even when they were both so tired. And then, in a sad twist no one expected, tragedy came suddenly and coldly, stopping their story forever. When CBS showed Rob Reiner's last appearance, the world didn't see a big Hollywood star. They saw a tired man whose heart looked worn out from years of quiet pain. His face had deep lines and sadness that said more than words ever could. Under the bright lights, it was clear this wasn't about fame or power. It was about a man who gave everything for love and lost almost everything back. The calm, strong man people knew was gone. In his place was someone completely worn out, his voice shaking from a lifetime of hurt. The crew on set didn't know it then. You have to prove that his son did not know the difference between right and wrong during the commission of the crime. And that takes experts forensics. You look at all the data, social media, emails, and text messaging, and so forth to see if in fact the person did not know the difference between right and wrong. But they were watching what would become Rob Reiner's last big confession, a moment that stayed frozen forever. He said right away he wasn't there to talk about a new movie or celebrate his work. "I'm here," he said quietly, "because it's time to tell the truth, especially about my family." He talked about their home, that famous bright house that magazines always showed as perfect and happy. But behind those happy walls, Rob said, there were years of silence that got too heavy to bear. There were long times with no talking, where love got quiet, and where being together turned into being alone. He said he got so busy directing, writing, and chasing perfect movies that he didn't notice what was right in front of him. Michele slowly fading into her own world of distance and being alone. "I thought silence meant peace," he said sadly. "But later I realized silence can also mean leaving someone behind." Those words shocked everyone in the studio. Rob kept talking about the moment his life changed when he met Michele Singer on the set of When Harry Met Sally back in 1989. He said she changed everything. The movie's first ending was sad, like his own heartbreak after splitting from Penny Marshall. But when Michele, a happy young photographer visiting her friend, cinematographer Barry Sonnenfeld, walked onto that set, something clicked inside him, Rob said with a small smile. "Barry looked at me and said, 'You're not going to marry Michelle Pfeiffer, you're going to marry my friend Michele Singer.' And he was totally right. Before Michele, Rob said he always felt like something was missing. He made big movies, yes, but he felt like he was only living half a life. When I met Michele, he once said, I realized this is what real love feels like. It's not often prevailed upon, and even when it is successful, the person doesn't just walk away. They end up being in a state hospital for most of the duration of their life." LAPD Chief McDonald said that they're not sure if the murders were conducted on Saturday night or Sunday, saying that timing could impact how the case is prosecuted. Why does that timing matter in prosecuting the case? That feeling made him rewrite When Harry Met Sally's ending, turning sad into happy, letting Harry and Sally get back together on New Year's Eve just like he and Michele had found each other. Just months later, they got married in Hawaii in a small, quick ceremony with only 2 strangers there to watch. "We weren't just husband and wife," Rob said proudly. "We were partners. She made me whole." But what no one knew then was that even when their story looked perfect, the small cracks had already started. The moment they felt most complete was the same moment they started to slowly drift apart. Quietly, slowly, and with a hurt that got heavier over time. That was when Rob started talking about the little everyday things that made his marriage to Michele so real. He laughed a little as he described how different they were when raising their 3 kids. I was the soft one, the one who gave in. He said Michele was the one who kept things in order. And maybe that was why their home stayed balanced for so long. Because where Rob's kindness was big, Michele's rules kept everything steady. But even beyond love and marriage, Michele was his inspiration, the reason behind his best movies, the calm in his busy life, the quiet voice that reminded him who he really was. Without Michele, Rob said, his eyes far away, I don't know who I would have become. And when the talk turned to being a dad, the feeling in his voice got deeper. For all his big success in Hollywood, Rob said the best joy of his life wasn't making hit movies. It was holding his kids for the first time. I think it goes to the extent of deliberation and calculation by the defendant. The later in time that this murder occurred from when the initial fight was the more deliberate, and calculated the actual act was which would then back up the special circumstances murder which requires premeditation and planning. He described the feeling of a newborn baby on his chest, that tiny heartbeat against his, and how he made a quiet promise that no matter how mean the world got, he would always be their safe place. His love wasn't loud or showy, but it was deep like something that would last forever. But over time, that calm balance started to break. The moment everything began to fall apart was when his son Nick, who used to be the family's happiest light, started to change. Rob's voice broke as he remembered those first signs. Nick coming home late, the small smell of smoke, the faraway eyes that didn't look at him anymore. I saw it, Rob said quietly, but I told myself it was just teenage stuff. Then came the asks for money, small at first for movies or hanging out, then bigger and more often. Soon there were no reasons at all. Behind closed doors, Rob and Michele fought in whispers, trying to stay calm so Nick wouldn't hear. Maybe we should stop helping, Michele said one night, but Rob couldn't. He's our son, he said. He needs us. What he didn't see was that the line between love and helping too much was slowly going away. Their home, once full of laughs, started to feel like a battle place. Rob remembered the worst nights when Nick would bang on their door, yelling in a voice that didn't sound like him. Once he pushed Rob against the wall while Michele stood frozen, too scared to move. I didn't see my child, Rob said, his voice breaking. I saw a stranger wearing my son's face. When the interviewer asked why he never called the police, Rob looked down and whispered, because I'm a father. He said he was scared that one call could ruin Nick's future, that the news would twist the story, that the world would judge his son forever. But deep down, Rob knew the hardest truth. That love alone, no matter how strong, sometimes isn't enough to save someone you'd give your life for. There were nights when everything fell apart behind closed doors. Nick would yell, leave, and leave the house in mess. The quiet after was almost louder than the yelling. Rob said the hardest part wasn't the fighting or the damage. It was the heartbreak of still opening the door later, still hoping this time would be different. When he came back asking for money, Rob whispered, I knew I was being used, but if I said no, I'd lose him completely. He called it the deepest kind of hurt, one that breaks a parent's heart slowly. Our son betrayed us, Rob said, but we betrayed ourselves too because we didn't have the strength to say stop. He said fear and pretending everything was okay took the place of facing it. Instead of asking for help, he chose quiet, a quiet that became its own kind of jail. Still, Rob said he never stopped loving Nick. Even when he scared me, he confessed. I still saw the little boy who once needed me. That love was both his comfort and his heavy weight, a light that guided him and a chain that held him down. But that same love started to pull the family apart. The more Rob and Michele tried to protect their child, the more distant they got from each other. The laughs that once filled their home turned into awkward quiet, quick looks, and long nights talking in circles. No one could say the exact moment they stopped being a team, but they both felt it. A slow drift from years of being tired and heartbroken. It didn't explode, it just faded. Until love, once their biggest strength, became the reason for their fights. Rob said what wore him down most wasn't what people thought. It was the fake picture. People see the photos, he said softly. The smiles, the parties, they think that's real. But behind those doors, it was anything but peaceful. So many nights were spent in quiet after fights that left no words worth saying. Every fight came back to one thing, the kids. Not because of hate, but because of love shown in two different ways. Michele wanted rules and limits. She wanted Nick to face real life. Rob just wanted his kids' clothes no matter what. "We can't live like this anymore," Michele said one night. Rob stayed quiet, scared that anything he said would push her away more. Sometimes their fights weren't yelling. They were quiet talks in the kitchen at midnight. Michele once asked, "Are you protecting our child or your idea of being a good father?" Rob's answer was barely heard. "If I let go, I lose him." That one sentence made the distance between them forever. Things got worse after one really bad night when Nick caused big trouble. Michele, shaking with anger and heartbreak, grabbed the phone and said, "I'm calling the police." Rob stepped in front of her, begging, "Don't, please. He's our son." His voice cracked. Michele started crying, not from fear, but from being so tired. "You're choosing him," she said, "and leaving me behind." Her words stayed heavy in the air. Rob couldn't say no. "I love you," he whispered, "but I love our child too. I don't know how to keep from losing you both." That night almost ended everything. Talk of divorce came up, suitcases came out, then went back. Rob said it was the first time he really thought their family might not make it. Not from not enough love, but from too much love pulling in different directions. "We didn't fight over fame or money," he said. "We fought over the children we loved more than anything." Michele wanted them to be responsible. Rob wanted to keep them safe. "I couldn't bear to see my son in handcuffs," he admitted. Michele's reply was cold, "And I can't live in fear anymore." Both of them were right, and that's what made it so painful. Rob confessed that he chose quiet over truth, hoping to keep the family together. "Maybe," he said quietly, "I was just making the pain last longer. Those fights didn't break them fast. They wore them down slowly, bit by bit, like water cutting into stone." People still believed in the picture of their perfect family, but Rob said the truth was much more complicated. "Happiness doesn't mean there are no problems," he said softly. "It means seeing the problems and still trying to stay." Then he paused, his voice getting very quiet. "But there are costs, and I don't know if we paid them the right way." And it wasn't just Nick. Their other kids, Jake and Romy, had their own quiet struggles, the kind that never made news. When Rob talked about them, his voice had a softer sadness. Not big drama, but steady, like a hurt that never healed. He said Jake grew up with too much comfort, maybe too much. He never had to worry about anything, Rob explained. "He's smart but not driven. Every time I thought he'd take responsibility, he'd find another excuse. Not ready, not the right time. The world's too hard." Rob sighed and admitted he always gave in. "I kept saying he'd grow up eventually." Romy was different. Ambitious, loud, and used to getting her way. What started as small asks turned into always needing money. At first, it was little things, Rob said. Then it became rent, then loans that were never paid back. Michele's eyes often said what her words didn't, that something was slipping. Rob would just sigh and say, "She's our daughter." Their Brentwood home, once a safe place, became a sign of everything hard about love and family. When Romy said she didn't feel safe living far away, Rob gave in right away. She didn't ask, she demanded a house next door, private, nice, comfortable. Michele was mad. "Are we helping her or hurting her?" she asked. Rob had no answer, just guilt. In the end, he gave in. "I couldn't stand the thought of my daughter feeling unhappy," he admitted. Jake stayed too, caught in the same loop. The house got quieter, more comfortable, and somehow emptier. "We'd sit at dinner and no one would talk," Rob said. "I'd look at my children and wonder, do they even want their own lives?" But the thing that hurt him most wasn't their needing help. It was the sadness in Michele's eyes. She never yelled, she just whispered, "Once we're running out." Rob never asked if she meant money or hope. He already knew. He said he'd chosen the easy path, giving instead of teaching, pleasing instead of guiding. I was so afraid of losing my children, Rob admitted. But in the end, I lost myself. Every ask, every taking chipped away at him, yet he couldn't stop. When the interviewer asked if he regretted it, Rob went quiet. Finally, he nodded. I regret thinking I had time, he said. Families don't fall apart because of one big bad thing. They fall apart because of thousands of small moments we let go. Then, for the first time, he looked straight into the camera, his eyes heavy but clear, and spoke like he was talking to Michele herself. His voice dropped to a whisper. If you're watching, I understand now. I just understood a little too late. Those were Rob Reiner's last words before the studio went completely quiet. Not a sound from the crew, not from the cameras. That quiet was heavier than any music. See, could be. When the interview ended, no one knew it would be Rob's last time on TV before the world said goodbye to him forever. After he passed away, CBS News showed the full talk again as a special in his memory. No cuts, raw and very real. No big extra words, no added feelings, just Rob sitting there under the cold lights, weak but honest with the words. A storyteller, a husband, a father, appearing softly on the screen. Near the end of that show, CBS added a behind-the-scenes clip never seen before. Rob turned to the interviewer and quietly asked, "Do you think my family will be happy?" The man paused, then said, "Happiness will come soon." Rob nodded slowly, closing his eyes as though he was finally letting go of a heavy weight he'd carried his whole life. When that memory show aired, the world stopped to listen. Viewers weren't watching just to know more. They were shocked. Rob and Michele had always been seen as Hollywood's perfect couple, smart, loving, real. To see the truth behind the curtain, the pain hidden behind smiles and red carpet photos was a big shock that left millions without words. Many said they couldn't even watch the whole thing at once. It wasn't too dramatic. It was too real. The way Rob talked about fear, quiet, and years of not facing truth touched people deeply. He didn't sound like a famous person. He sounded like a dad fighting inside him. Viewers realized something scary. Sometimes tragedy doesn't come from outside. It grows inside the very homes we think are safest. The news called it a last confession, but to many it felt like a quiet cry for help that came too late. Rob's calm voice made it even more sad. A man too tired to yell, too used to the pain to fight it anymore. And then came that sad day, the 14th, just a month after the interview. The news hit like a shock. The same family everyone thought had finally found peace was suddenly gone. Rob and Michele were found lifeless inside their own home. But what shocked the world even more was what happened next. Their son, Nick Reiner, the same child Rob had spent his life trying to protect, was the one who did it. Everything Rob had feared, everything he'd tried so hard to stop had come true in the worst way possible. The quiet he chose out of love had turned into the thing that destroyed them all. His words from the interview echoed like a ghost. I was just afraid of losing my child. When CBS played that same video again, people couldn't stop crying. Every word now sounded like goodbye, like a man leaving his last message without knowing it. If there were still time, he had said, and everyone broke down. The time had been there, but no one had dared to face the truth soon enough. After that, how people saw them changed completely. The perfect family photo was no longer happy. It was scary. People started asking themselves how many other homes were living the same story, smiling for the world while falling apart in quiet behind closed doors. The scariest part wasn't the act that ended it all, but the years before it. The quiet, heavy years when love, fear, and pretending became too mixed up to fix. Rob Reiner's love for his son had no limits. No limits. It blinded him, trapped him, and in the end destroyed everything he loved. His story became more than news. It became a sad modern story, one that left a scary reminder about what happens when love has no limits, when quiet becomes protection, and when help comes too late. But to really understand the heartbreak, we have to look at where it all started with Michele herself. Who was the woman who once stood at the heart of that family? Michele singer Reiner, born March 3, 1955 in New York City, wasn't just the wife of a Hollywood star. She was a famous photographer, film producer, and someone who fought for what was right, with a life full of her own stories. Raised in a warm Jewish family on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, Michele had the kind of grace that came from creativity and quiet strength. The same strength that would one day hold her family together when everything else started to fall apart. Michele singer Reiner's story began long before Hollywood lights ever touched her name. Her mother, Nicole Bernernheim Eileit, was a Holocaust survivor, a woman who escaped the death march from Auschwitz in 1944 and rebuilt her life from nothing. That story of huge strength shaped Michele's whole heart. It lit a fire inside her, a passion for fairness, for truth, and for speaking up when quiet became dangerous. From childhood, Michele carried that bravery proudly. She spoke French and Spanish well, and while studying at the School of Visual Arts in New York, her love for photography became her dream. Her early years weren't fancy. Music. She started as a quiet assistant to photographers, carrying heavy stuff, fixing lights, and watching others get the attention. But that's where she learned her gift, the art of watching people, seeing what they are. Wide to hide behind perfect smiles and sure faces. Music soon, her camera became her voice. Michele's freelance work got noticed by Fortune magazine, and by the mid-1980s, she was taking portraits that defined that time. In 1987, she photographed the cover for The Art of the Deal, a job she would later say she regretted. Still, her work made her respected in photography, capturing both beauty and truth through her lens. Then, fate stepped in. In 1989, while visiting her friend Barry Sonnenfeld on the set of When Harry Met Sally, Michele met director Rob Reiner, and in that moment everything changed. Rob, single after his divorce, saw her from across the set and couldn't look away. Barry joked, "You're not going to marry Michele Pfeiffer. You're going to marry my friend Michele Singer." And unbelievably, he was right. Their love story moved fast, and within months, Rob and Michele were married in Hawaii in a small private ceremony with only 2 strangers as witnesses. One old woman even complimented Rob on the Princess Bride that day. A sweet, quick moment that showed the simple side of their love. Michele didn't just enter Rob's life, she changed it. Her presence changed even the ending of When Harry Met Sally. The film was first written with a sad ending, but after falling in love with Michele, Rob rewrote it so that Harry and Sally found each other again just as he had found her. For the next 36 years, Rob and Michele became one of Hollywood's most loved couples. Not just husband and wife, but creative partners, people who fought for good causes, and best friends. Together, they raised 3 children. Jake, born in 1991, Nick, born in 1993, and Romy, born in 1997. Behind the camera and beyond it, Michele was the fire that kept Rob going. He often said she was the reason behind everything they did. Her career kept growing. She co-founded Reiner Light and served as co-chair of Castle Rock Entertainment, producing films like Shock and Awe 2017, Albert Brooks' Defending My Life 2023 Ray, which earned an Emmy nomination, and God and Country 2024. She even worked on Spinal Tap 2 set for 2025. In 2020, she and Rob signed a big deal with Warner Brothers Television, making their place strong as both artists and people with purpose. Michele wasn't just a creative person. She was an activist with a strong heart. She co-founded the American Foundation for Equal Rights, which helped overturn Proposition 8 and make same-sex marriage legal across the United States. She fought for early childhood education, supported raising tobacco taxes to help schools, and worked closely with the Innocence Project to free people who were wrongly convicted. Wherever she saw unfairness, Michele showed up and fought with everything she had. Rob once said with pride, Michele is the force behind everything we do. She wants to end injustice. He often called her his true north, the person who reminded him what really mattered. When I met her, Rob said in one interview, I finally understood what real love feels like. She made me whole. Michele herself said the same thing in a 2022 podcast. It just felt right, she said. We fell in love instantly and never looked back. Friends described her as brilliant, kind, and always working hard. A woman who balanced creativity and doing right like few could. Together, she and Rob built a partnership that became famous, built not on fame, but on purpose. But on December 14th, 2025, that love story came to a heartbreaking end. Michele and Rob were found lifeless in their Brentwood home, an event that sent shock waves through Hollywood and far beyond. Their son, Nick Reiner, was arrested and charged in connection with their passing. The tragedy left a painful quiet in the entertainment world, and in the hearts of those who had believed in the Reiners as a symbol of strength and compassion. When CBS regered Rob's interview after their loss, it hit harder than anyone could have imagined. Viewers didn't just see a director or a legend. They saw a man who had spent his life trying to hold his family together, even when the cracks were too deep to fix. What he said in that interview no longer felt like just thinking back. It sounded like a goodbye written while it was happening. Those final words became a mirror for everyone watching, forcing people to face the painful truth that behind perfect smiles, many families are quietly falling apart. Rob and Michele's story wasn't meant to shock. It was meant to open eyes. It reminded the world that love without limits or honesty can slowly turn into the very thing that destroys what it's trying to protect. And that's the heartbreaking part. Rob didn't speak out for pity. He spoke out because he couldn't bear to let quiet win anymore. He wanted people to see the truth, even if it came too late. So here's the question he leaves behind, one that stays long after the screen goes dark. If you were in his place, how far would you go to protect the people you love? When does protection become too much? When does silence turn into being part of the problem? And most haunting of all, can love by itself really save someone who doesn't want to be saved? If you've got your own thoughts or experiences that echo any part of this story, drop them in the comments below. Your voice matters. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video to keep these conversations alive, because somewhere out there, someone might need to hear it too. See you in the next one, where we keep uncovering the truths people are too afraid to